I discovered my wife's secret identity as my best friend's online fiancé. It started, like most things do, with a stupid accident. A dropped phone, a cracked screen, a moment of panicked scrambling that ended up exposing a digital ghost. You know, the kind of thing that spirals out of control faster than a drunk driver on a Saturday night. And yeah, I know, it's a wild premise, right? But stick with me. If you're feeling this, if this story resonates, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button. And while you're at it, throw a like on this thing. Share it with anyone you think might get it, and drop a comment below. Let me know what you think, what you'd do, or if you've ever been in a similar twisted situation. Seriously, your engagement helps keep these stories coming. My world, or what I thought was my world, was pretty damn straightforward. Mark, my wife Sarah, and me. That was the whole damn universe. We'd been together since college, Mark and I. Brothers, really. Not blood brothers, obviously, but the kind of bond that transcends DNA. We'd navigated questionable dorm room choices, ramen noodle dinners, the crushing weight of first real jobs, and the awkward dance of dating. And then Sarah walked into my life, a ray of sunshine in a perpetually overcast semester, and changed everything. She was smart, funny, beautiful, the whole package. She had this way of making you feel like the only person in the room, even when we were crammed into some dive bar with sticky floors and questionable music. We got married, bought a starter home in a decent suburb with a decent school district. You know, the typical American dream playbook. Mark was my best man. He was thrilled for us, genuinely. He'd always said he was happy to be the third wheel, the wingman, whatever it took to keep our trio intact. He lived in a decent apartment a few towns over, worked in IT, kept to himself mostly when he wasn't with us. He was a good guy, Mark, solid, dependable, the kind of guy you'd trust with your life, or, apparently, with your entire online persona. The cracked phone was Sarah's. She'd been complaining about the battery life for weeks, how it was constantly dying on her, how she couldn't get hold of me. Typical wife stuff, right? I'd been meaning to get it fixed, but life, you know, work, bills, the endless churn of existence. So one Tuesday evening, while she was at her book club, a thing she'd picked up a few months back, something about connecting with other minds, I was messing around on my laptop, catching up on emails, when her phone buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced at it. It was a text message from someone named Leo. Now, Sarah's phone was locked, of course, but it was one of those newfangled smart ones where the notification pops up on the lock screen. And this one was long, and it was weird. It wasn't just a quick, "Hey, thinking of you." This was like a whole paragraph, and the language was flowery, overly affectionate. It talked about how much Leo missed her and how their future together was going to be even brighter than their past. My gut did this little clench, this tiny, almost imperceptible shift. Sarah wasn't one for flowery language. She was practical, grounded. I picked up her phone. Curiosity, that insatiable beast, gnawed at me. I tried her passcode. Standard stuff. Birth date, anniversary, the year we met, nothing. Then a wild, stupid guess. The name of her cat. Bingo. The screen lit up. And there it was. A string of messages from Leo. Hundreds of them. And they weren't just affectionate. They were intimate. Deeply intimate. Talking about dreams, fears, shared jokes that only two people who'd spent years building a private world would understand. And the dates stretched back. Months. Months of this secret life unfolding on her phone. My hands started to shake. I scrolled up further and further, my breath catching in my throat with each message. It was like peeling back the layers of an onion, only instead of tears, it was bile rising in my stomach. I saw pictures. Not nudes, nothing that explicit, but pictures nonetheless. A sunset, a dog in a park, a ridiculously large stack of pancakes. Things that felt like shared moments, moments I wasn't privy to. Who was this Leo? A secret lover? An old flame? The questions started to crowd my mind, a swarm of angry wasps. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room, to shatter it into a million pieces. But I couldn't. I was frozen, trapped in this digital rabbit hole. Then I saw it. A reference to a shared online game. Something I knew Sarah dabbled in, a casual thing she did to unwind. They were talking about their characters, their guild, their progress. And Leo mentioned how he was looking forward to their next raid. A raid. That was a term I recognized. Mark played that game, obsessively. He tried to get me into it a few times, but I'd never had the patience. And he'd always talked about his online crew, his gaming buddies. Could it be? No,
No, that was insane. Mark? Sarah? Impossible. They were friends, sure, they'd known each other for years, but it was always platonic. Mark was my best friend. He couldn't. My fingers, moving with a will of their own, navigated to Sarah's browser history. I typed online game into the search bar. I filtered by date, looking for anything recent. And there it was, a link to the game's forum. I clicked it, my heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. I searched for the username Leo. It was there, plenty of posts. And in the profile section, a link to another profile, a profile with a picture. My breath hitched. It was Mark. Not Mark from our college days, not the guy who was always a little scruffy and wore band t-shirts. This was Mark in a suit, looking surprisingly sharp, a slight smile playing on his lips. And beneath the picture, a brief bio. Gamer, aspiring writer, happily engaged. Engaged. My mind reeled.
Engaged to whom? He'd never mentioned anyone, not a single word. I scrolled back through the messages from Leo on Sarah's phone. I looked at the way he talked about their future. I looked at the shared jokes. And then I saw a message from Sarah, a reply to Leo, where she'd said, "You always know how to make me laugh. You're the only one who gets my sarcastic humor." Sarcastic humor. That was my Sarah. That was our thing. And it was Leo's thing too. The pieces started to click into place, each one a sharp jab to the gut. The late nights Sarah had been spending on her phone, claiming she was researching for her book club. The hushed phone calls she'd sometimes take in the other room, her voice lowered to a whisper. The way she'd started to pull away, subtly at first, then more noticeably. I'd attributed it to stress, to work, to the general ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. I'd told myself I was being paranoid, that I was overthinking things. But this was undeniable. This was a betrayal so profound, so twisted, it made my head spin. My wife, the woman I'd built my life with, was engaged to my best friend. And not just engaged, but living this entire secret life with him online. How long had this been going on? How deep did this go? I went back to the messages. I searched for Mark's username on the game forum. It was Sir Leo. Leo. Not Leo as in a nickname, but Leo. Sir Leo. It was all there, laid bare for me to see. Their conversations weren't just about the game. They were about everything. Their hopes, their dreams, their frustrations with their respective lives. And Sarah, my Sarah, was pouring her heart out to him. The same heart I thought I knew. The same heart I'd promised to cherish. They were planning a life together, a life that didn't include me. The betrayal wasn't just the fact that she was cheating. It was the sheer audacity of it, the calculated deception, the way she'd looked me in the eye day after day and lied. And Mark, my Mark, the guy who'd always been there for me, the guy who knew Sarah better than almost anyone, he was part of it. He was complicit. He was the other man, the online fiancé. I felt a cold dread settle over me, a heavy blanket of despair. I scrolled through more of Sarah's messages. She was talking about meeting Leo's parents, planning their wedding venue, picking out invitations. Invitations. It was like I was watching a train wreck in slow motion, unable to look away. Every word was a fresh wound. I saw messages where she was complaining about me, about my habits, about my perceived shortcomings. Things she'd never said to my face, things I would have fought for, worked on, if she'd only given me the chance. But she hadn't. She'd found another outlet, another person to share her life with, and that person was my best friend. The irony was so thick, so suffocating, I could barely breathe. My wife and my best friend, building a future together behind my back, using a fictional online persona as their shield. I looked at the clock. It was almost 9 p.m. Sarah's book club would be ending soon. She'd be home any minute. What was I supposed to do? Confront her? With what evidence? Her phone, open on the coffee table. A silent testament to her infidelity. The messages from Leo. The picture of Mark.
It all felt too surreal, too much like a bad dream. I imagined her walking through the door, her usual cheerful demeanor, and my world would fracture completely. I couldn't do it. Not yet. I needed time. Time to process. Time to understand how my life had imploded so spectacularly. I closed Sarah's phone, my fingers still trembling. I put it back on the table, exactly where it had been. I stood up, my legs feeling like lead. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a whiskey, neat, and downed it in one go. The burn was a welcome distraction from the hollowness in my chest. I stared out the window at the quiet suburban street, the streetlights casting long, eerie shadows. My own home felt like a foreign land, a place of betrayal and lies. I heard the faint sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Sarah. My heart leaped into my throat. I stood there, a statue of shock and disbelief, waiting for the woman I thought I knew to walk through the door, blissfully unaware that her carefully constructed world had just crumbled into dust. And as the front door opened, and her familiar voice called out, "Honey, I'm home," I knew, with a sickening certainty, that nothing would ever be the same again. The silence in the house, before I responded, felt like an eternity of unspoken accusations and shattered trust. I took another shaky breath, the whiskey doing little to numb the searing pain. I had to say something, but what? How could I possibly begin to unravel this abomination? The weight of what I knew, what I had discovered, was crushing me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But all I could manage was a choked whisper that felt like it was ripped from my soul. The click of the lock turning, the familiar squeak of the hinge, her footsteps on the hardwood floor. They were all sounds I'd heard thousands of times, woven into the fabric of my daily existence. But tonight, they sounded alien, like a soundtrack to a horror movie I was trapped inside. Her voice, so sweet and normal, "Honey, I'm home," hung in the air, mocking me with its innocence. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, knuckles white, my gaze fixed on the doorway. I pictured her bright smile, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she was genuinely happy. Was that all a performance? A carefully crafted illusion to hide the truth that was screaming at me from her phone? I took another breath, trying to steady my voice, to keep it from cracking. "Hey, hun," I managed, the words feeling like sandpaper in my throat.
I forced myself to walk out of the kitchen, to face her, to pretend that the world hadn't just tilted on its axis. She was in the hallway, shrugging off her coat, her usual cheerful chatter already starting. "You won't believe the discussion we had tonight. So insightful. I feel like I'm really growing, you know?" She looked at me, her eyes bright, her face open. It was like looking at a stranger, a beautiful, heartbreakingly familiar stranger. That's great, Sarah," I said, my voice strained. I couldn't meet her gaze for long. The images from her phone, Mark's profile picture, their intimate messages, the wedding plans, flashed behind my eyes. "Just got home myself," I lied, the words tasting like ash. She nodded, oblivious, and walked past me towards the living room. "I'll just grab some water. You want anything?" she called back, her tone light. I shook my head, unable to speak. I watched her go, my body rigid, a coiled spring of anger and confusion. This was Mark's territory too. This house, this life. The life I thought we'd built together. The one he was supposedly so happy for. He'd celebrated our anniversaries with us. He'd helped me pick out Sarah's birthday presents. He'd been my confidant. And all this time, he'd been sleeping with my wife. Not physically, not yet, but emotionally, intimately, digitally. He'd been building a future with her, a future that excluded me entirely. The sheer scale of the deception was staggering. It wasn't just a momentary lapse, a fling. This was planned. It was a whole alternate reality they'd constructed, brick by digital brick, while I lived in blissful ignorance. I sank onto the couch,
my mind a chaotic storm. How long? That was the question that kept echoing. How long had this been going on? Months? Years? The messages stretched back, certainly months. But could it have started earlier? The game. They met through the game. That was the entry point. A casual hobby for Sarah, an obsession for Mark. And somewhere in the pixels and online chatter, something had ignited. I remembered Mark mentioning how Sarah was good at strategy games, how she had a surprisingly sharp mind for it. He'd said it in passing, a compliment to her intellect. I just nodded, proud that my wife was smart. I hadn't seen the sinister undertones, the seeds of betrayal being sown. He'd always been a bit of a loner, Mark. He'd had girlfriends before, sure, but nothing serious. He'd never seemed to find that one person. I'd always assumed he was just waiting for the right one to come along. I never imagined she was already in my life. She was Sarah, my Sarah, the one who laughed at my terrible jokes, who rubbed my shoulders when I was stressed, who knew exactly how I liked my coffee, the one who was apparently whispering sweet nothings to my best friend in the anonymity of the internet. I picked up my own phone, my fingers hovering over the keypad. Who could I call? Who could I possibly tell? My parents?
They'd be devastated. My sister? She'd probably tell me to burn the whole thing down. Mark's parents? Absolutely not. And Sarah's parents? I couldn't even begin to imagine that conversation. It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, and the only way out was to confront the monsters. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to understand the depth of this, the full extent of their lies. I needed to see the evidence with my own eyes, not just through Sarah's phone. I needed to find out if Mark had a secret online persona too, beyond Sir Leo. Was Leo his only guise, or was there more to this than I could even comprehend? I stood up again, a new, chilling thought forming. If Sarah was engaged to Mark online, what did that mean for us? Was she planning to leave me? Was she just biding her time? The thought of her walking away, of our life together ending, sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. But it was quickly overshadowed by a burning rage. How dare she? How dare she lie to me, to our marriage, to our vows? And Mark, my best friend? The betrayal from him cut deeper than I could have imagined. We'd shared everything, secrets, dreams, fears. He'd seen me at my worst, and I'd seen him at his. And he'd used all of that intimacy, all of that history, to betray me in the most fundamental way possible. I walked into our bedroom, the sanctuary of our marriage, and it felt violated. Her side of the closet was neat, organized. My side was, well, mine, a bit messy, a bit disorganized. That was us. We were different, but we fit, or so I thought. I opened her dresser, my heart pounding. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just something, anything that would explain this. A diary? Letters? But it was all just clothes, neatly folded. I closed the drawers, feeling a rising sense of desperation. I needed to see it all. I needed to understand how they'd managed this. I pulled out my laptop, the familiar glow of the screen a small comfort in the darkness. I opened a new tab and typed in the website for the game. I navigated to the forum, my hands trembling. I typed in Sir Leo, and there he was, Mark's profile. The picture was still the same, the sharp suit, the confident smile. I scrolled through his posts. They were extensive, filled with in-game jargon and jokes that I didn't understand. But then I found them, the private messages. He'd linked his account to a secondary email address that wasn't his usual one. A burner maybe. Clever. I logged into that email address using a password that was a variant of something I knew Mark would use. Bingo. It was a treasure trove of their illicit communications, their plans, their fantasies. The messages were even more explicit than the ones on Sarah's phone. They talked about their future together, not just online, but in the real world. They discussed how they would make it happen. Sarah was apparently tired of being the wife, of the routine, of the expectations. Mark, on the other hand, was tired of being alone, of his own perceived failures. They found solace and excitement in each other, a dangerous cocktail of escapism and forbidden desire. There was a thread where they'd been discussing me. "He's so oblivious," one message from Sarah read. "It's almost sad. He thinks we're just friends." And Mark's reply, don't feel bad. He wouldn't understand this. This is something special. Special? This was a demolition. This was ruin. Then I found it. A message from Mark to Sarah, dated just a few weeks ago. The tickets are booked for the weekend after next. It's perfect. A little cabin upstate, quiet, private, just like we imagined. My parents are out of town, so I can have the house to myself. We'll be completely alone. I can't wait to finally be with you, Sarah. Really be with you. Tickets, a cabin, the weekend after next. My blood ran cold. He was planning to physically be with her, not just online. This wasn't just a digital affair anymore. This was escalating. This was a tangible plan for betrayal. My fingers flew across the keyboard, my heart hammering against my ribs. I searched for flights, for cabin rentals upstate, using the dates they'd mentioned. It was like a needle in a haystack, but I felt a grim determination pushing me forward. I had to know. I had to see if this was real, if this was the final nail in the coffin of my marriage, of my friendship. I found a small, secluded cabin rental in a popular upstate tourist region. The dates matched. And the name on the booking? It wasn't Mark's name. It was a fake name, a pseudonym. But the credit card used for the booking? It was a card I recognized. It was Sarah's. She'd opened a separate account, a secret account, to fund this. I felt a wave of nausea. The depth of their planning, the sheer clandestine nature of it all, was terrifying. I sat back, stunned. They weren't just having an online affair. They were actively planning a real-world rendezvous. And Sarah, my Sarah, was using her own money to facilitate it. My mind raced with possibilities, each one more horrifying than the last. Was this the culmination of their online relationship? A chance to finally bridge the digital divide? Or was it a prelude to something more? A deliberate step towards abandoning me entirely? The idea of them together, physically, in a secluded cabin, sent a searing jolt of pain through me. I imagined them holding hands, kissing, making love. It was a scenario I couldn't stomach. I looked at my phone, the cracked screen a metaphor for my shattered life. Who was the real victim here? Sarah? Mark? Or me? I felt a suffocating sense of isolation, of being utterly alone in this unfolding tragedy. I picked up my phone again and scrolled through my contacts. My fingers stopped at Mark's name. I could call him. I could scream at him, confront him, demand an explanation. But what good would that do? He'd probably deny it, deflect, gaslight me. He was good at that. He was a master of manipulation, of hiding his true self. And Sarah? I couldn't even begin to fathom talking to her. The woman I loved, the woman I'd promised my life to, was apparently capable of this level of deceit. I closed my laptop, the screen going dark, mirroring the blackness that had descended upon my soul. The silence in the house was deafening, amplifying the turmoil raging within me. I was trapped between the past I thought I knew and the horrifying present that had been revealed. The knowledge of their planned rendezvous was a ticking time bomb, and I had no idea how to defuse it. I was a man adrift, his world ripped apart by the two people he trusted most. I walked over to the window, staring out at the quiet suburban street, the same street I'd once felt so safe on. Now, it felt like a stage for a drama I never wanted to be a part of. The porch light cast a solitary glow, a beacon in the overwhelming darkness. I wondered if they'd ever considered the consequences of their actions, the devastation they were leaving in their wake. I felt a primal urge to shatter something, to break free from this suffocating reality. But all I could do was stand there, my body heavy with despair. The image of that secluded cabin imprinted on my mind, a chilling premonition of what was to come. The weekend after next. It felt like both an eternity and an immediate threat. I had to do something. But what?
The path forward was obscured by a thick fog of confusion and a gnawing sense of betrayal that threatened to consume me whole. And then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text message. From Sarah. My heart lurched. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the screen. Was this it? Was she going to confess? Or was it just another mundane message, a cruel reminder of the normalcy that had been so brutally stolen from me? With trembling fingers, I tapped the screen. The message was short, innocent. Hey, just wanted to say goodnight. Love you. Love you. The words landed like a physical blow. They were a grotesque mockery of everything I was feeling. I stared at the words, tears welling up in my eyes. Love me? She loved me? While planning a secret weekend getaway with my best friend? The hypocrisy was staggering. The sheer, unadulterated gall of it all. I wanted to throw my phone. I wanted to scream until my lungs gave out. But I couldn't. I just sat there, numb. The words "love you" burning a hole in my vision. I closed my eyes, trying to block out that cabin of them together. But it was no use. The vision was seared into my brain, a constant, agonizing reminder of the betrayal that had shattered my world. And then, another text message came in. From Mark. My blood ran cold. This was it. The final confirmation. The digital confession I both dreaded and desperately needed. My thumb hovered over the screen, my breath catching in my throat.
I knew with a sickening certainty that whatever was in that message would push me over the edge. The vibration felt like a tremor through the empty room, a twinny earthquake in the landscape of my shattered life. Mark. His name glowed on the screen, a harbinger of the final blow. I didn't hesitate this time. There was no point in delaying the inevitable. No more moments to steal from the ghost of the man I thought I knew. My thumb tapped the message open, and the words swam before my eyes, blurry with unshed tears and a primal, guttural rage. Dude, just wanted to say thanks for the game nights. You're a legend. See you soon, hopefully. Mark. See you soon, hopefully. It was a casual sign-off, the kind he'd sent 1,000 times. But now, knowing what I knew, it was a dagger. A sick, twisted joke. He was saying goodbye, in his own warped way, before he went off to be with my wife. He was playing me, even in his final communication. A legend. Was that what he thought? That I was some kind of stoic, oblivious legend, happily handing over my wife and my life to him while he plotted his grand escape? The sheer audacity of it all, it was breathtaking. I reread Sarah's message, "Love you," and then Mark's, "See you soon, hopefully." The two pieces of a puzzle I desperately wished I'd never found. It wasn't just a digital affair, not just an emotional entanglement. It was a carefully orchestrated plan. A transition from virtual intimacy to physical reality. A methodical dismantling of my existence. The cabin, the weekend after next. They were going to do it. They were going to erase me. A strangled sound escaped my throat, a raw, ragged noise that was more animal than human. It was the sound of a man witnessing the demolition of his entire world, brick by painstakingly laid brick. I stood by the window, the suburban street outside now a bizarre diorama of a life I no longer inhabited. The familiar houses, the manicured lawns, the sleepy stillness, it all felt like a cruel mockery. These were the settings for their betrayal, the backdrop against which my life had been systematically torn apart. My mind flashed back to the last time I'd seen Mark. We'd gone for beers at O'Malley's,
a dive bar we'd frequented since college. He'd been complaining about his job, about feeling stuck, about not finding the right person. I'd listened, offered advice, even commiserated. I'd poured him another drink, my hand resting on his shoulder, a gesture of genuine camaraderie. And all the while, he'd been carrying this secret, this elaborate deception, this plan to steal my wife. The memory was like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. He'd looked me in the eye. He'd laughed at my jokes. He'd, what? Been compartmentalizing, enjoying the thrill of the forbidden. And Sarah, God, Sarah. I pictured her across the dinner table, her hand reaching for mine, her eyes full of a tenderness I'd always believed was real.
Her concern when I was sick, her excitement about our future holidays, the way she'd kiss me goodbye every morning, every single moment, every whisper of affection, every shared glance. Was it all a performance? A well-rehearsed lie? The thought was unbearable. It was like trying to breathe underwater. I walked into the living room, the space where we'd curled up on the couch watching movies, where we'd hosted parties, where we'd built our life. Now, it felt haunted. Haunted by the ghost of our happiness, by the specter of their illicit connection. I saw the throw pillows she'd picked out, the framed photos of our wedding on the mantelpiece, the coffee mug I always used. Each object was a testament to a love that I'd believed was unbreakable. And now, it was just debris. The anger began to simmer, a slow burn that threatened to consume me. It wasn't just sadness or heartbreak anymore. It was a searing, righteous fury. How dare they? How dare they take something so precious, so sacred, and treat it like a game? How dare they violate the trust I had placed in them, the very foundation of my existence? I wanted to rip things apart, to smash the furniture, to tear down the walls. But the energy wasn't there. It was a heavy, suffocating despair. I went back to my laptop, the glow of the screen a familiar, cold comfort. I needed proof. I needed to see the extent of their plans, to map out their descent into this abyss. I revisited the burner email, the digital graveyard of their affair. I scrolled through the messages, each one a fresh stab to the heart. They talked about their escape, their new beginning. They'd even discussed what they'd tell people. Sarah was going to say she was unhappy, that she needed space. Mark was going to say he was moving on, that he'd found someone. They'd rehearsed their lies, crafting a narrative that would sanitize their betrayal and make them the victims. I found a message where Sarah was talking about me directly. "He's so good," she'd written. "He deserves so much better. But I can't do this anymore. Mark makes me feel alive. He understands me in a way no one else ever has." Understands her. Mark, the man who'd always been a bit of a cipher, a mystery even to me. He'd apparently unlocked something in Sarah that I, her husband of 8 years, never could. The thought was a bitter pill to swallow. Was I truly so oblivious, so complacent? Had I let our marriage become a comfortable routine, devoid of the spark that had drawn them together? The cabin booking. I pulled up the details again. A secluded spot, a winding gravel road, a small, rustic cottage nestled by a lake. It was the picture of romantic isolation. I imagined them arriving, unpacking their bags, the air thick with anticipation. The thought of them together in that place, under the guise of a secret escape, made me feel physically ill. I kept thinking about the credit card. Sarah's credit card.
She'd gone to such lengths, created a separate financial life to facilitate this. It wasn't a spontaneous act. It was a deliberate, calculated move. I closed the laptop again, the silence pressing in on me. The weekend after next. I had less than 2 weeks. 2 weeks to decide. 2 weeks to process the implosion of my life. 2 weeks to formulate a response to the ultimate betrayal. I needed to be rational. I needed to think. But my brain felt like a scrambled mess of emotions.
guilt for not seeing it, anger at their audacity, sorrow for the loss of my marriage and my friendship, and a deep, gnawing fear of what came next. What did I do with this information? Do I confront them? Do I try to salvage something, anything from the wreckage? Or do I just walk away, a broken man in a broken world? I walked into the kitchen, the scene of Sarah's innocent greeting just hours before. The same clean countertops, the same gleaming appliances. It felt surreal, like I was inhabiting a dollhouse, everything perfectly arranged, but with no life force behind it. I opened the refrigerator, staring blankly at the contents. A carton of milk, some leftovers, a half-eaten tub of ice cream. The mundane details of our shared life, now coated in the bitter residue of deception. I closed the door without taking anything. I wasn't hungry. I was sick to my stomach. I thought about calling a lawyer. I thought about packing a bag and disappearing. I thought about driving upstate and burning down that damn cabin. Each thought was fleeting, an explosion of impulse quickly doused by the overwhelming weight of my reality. I was trapped. The hours ticked by. I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, the only light coming from the street lamp outside. I replayed conversations, examined glances, searched for any hint, any sign that I might have missed. But there was nothing obvious. They were good. Too good. They'd built their secret world so carefully, so meticulously, that it had remained invisible to me. Then, a new thought, sharp and cold, pierced through the fog of my despair. What if I didn't confront them? What if I let them go to the cabin? What if I waited? I could find out exactly what they were planning, what their next moves would be. I could gather more evidence, build a case, protect myself. It felt clinical, detached. But the raw, emotional confrontation I'd initially envisioned felt impossible. I wasn't sure I had the strength for it. I stood up, a strange sense of calm descending upon me. It wasn't resignation, not exactly. It was a grim resolve. I wouldn't be the victim. I wouldn't be the fool. I would be the one who saw through the charade. I would be the one who dictated the terms of the end. I picked up my phone, not to text or call, but to record. I started a voice memo, my voice rough, uncertain at first, then gaining a steady, chilling cadence. I spoke of the discovery, of the messages, of the cabin. I laid out the timeline, the betrayal, the pain.
It was a confession, a testament, a final, desperate attempt to make sense of the madness. They think they're starting something, I murmured into the phone, my voice a low growl. They think they're escaping, but they're not escaping. They're just running. I walked over to the window again, looking out at the quiet street. A car drove past, its headlights momentarily illuminating the familiar houses. Life was going on. People were sleeping, waking, living their ordinary lives, blissfully unaware of the earthquake that had shaken my world. I looked down at my phone, at the 2 messages from Sarah and Mark. Love you. See you soon, hopefully. They were echoes of a past that was already dead, and harbingers of a future I had to build from scratch. The cabin, the weekend after next, that was their next step. My next step would be different. It would be deliberate. It would be final. I closed my eyes, picturing the secluded cabin, the lake, the quiet woods. I imagined them there, alone together, believing they were finally free. And in that moment, a strange sort of peace settled over me. They could have their escape. They could have their manufactured happiness, but they would never have my trust again. They would never have my life. I lowered the phone, the voice memo saved. I took a deep, ragged breath, the air filling my lungs with a sense of something new. It wasn't hope, not yet. It was something harder, something like grit,
like survival. The dawn was still hours away, but for the first time since I'd seen those messages, I felt like I might just see it. I walked towards the bedroom, the same bedroom I'd shared with Sarah for years. It felt different now, colder, emptier, but not broken, not entirely. I knew the path ahead would be brutal. There would be pain and anger and a profound, aching loneliness, but there would also be clarity. And in that clarity, there was a faint, fragile possibility of a future where I could finally breathe. The weekend after next, I would be ready.